Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 525.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because one of the things that we need to be cognizant of, aware of, is that as we continue on this journey, building your cash flow, building your business, at some point, things change and things are constantly in flux. In fact, the industry that you start out in might look completely different, even though you're in the same industry. What am I really saying? I'm saying to you that technology is coming for your industry, regardless of what industry you're in. And this is nowhere more true than the industry of real estate. It's specifically real estate investment. I mean, I often joke and tell people, hey, we still use paper because we do. But at the same time, I'm somewhat serious because if you're paying attention on the horizon, you will find that there are many tech companies that are changing the way things are done. What does that mean? That means today's guest is changing the way things are done, and he's doing it with technology. And that's what I like. In fact, in his own words, they would say they are Uberizing real estate, which I think is interesting because we all know what Uber has done to transportation. In fact, I'm talking, of course, of none other than Peter Rex. He's the founder of InvestRes and the founder and CEO of Trustwork. What I think is going to happen is that you and I are going to learn a lot about technology. We're also going to see that even though they're out there operating 17,000 units throughout Florida, Texas, Arizona, Colorado, that it can still be done in a very simplified fashion that's scalable, that is vertically integrated, and that gives all of us different opportunity than we might be currently considering. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to learn, let's get ready to listen, and get ready to love Peter Rex. Peter, how you doing?
Jay, how's it going? It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm glad that you are here because I think you're going to have a lot to say, especially in the technology space. And I think there's a lot of people out there who need to hear your particular message, specifically how, like I said, technology is coming for your business. Now, before I get too deep into it, what I want to do is I want to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. You ready?
Yep.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Black Widow, Hulk, etc. You get the idea. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself flying around town using our products and services and saving our customers one sale at a time. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. Let's think about Spider-Man, for example. There was a time he was just a kid. He was going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos, trying to make some extra money to take Mary Jane out on a date. That's it. And then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and now he's presented with a choice of whether to use these new skills for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before all of the units, before your companies, before having over $1.5 billion of asset under management, before be taking on the challenge of building the largest company ever built, like you say, before all of this, what we want to know is, who is Peter Rex?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that intro, and I see what you're looking to understand and what the listeners would like to hear as well. And let me just say first to start off, why should anybody listen to me? And maybe they shouldn't. So let me give you three quick credentials.
I like it.
Built a $1 billion real estate company. In developing the plan for Trustwork, I visited 85 countries. And I have a Harvard JD, law degree from Harvard. And Trustwork is going to be the biggest company ever built. And that's not, that's something we're actually poised to do. So that's why you should listen to me. Maybe you don't want to listen to me, though. This would be the time to say, shut it off. But if you want to listen, let's ride. So who am I? What's my beginnings before that, superhero status, or however you put it there, Jay?
Yeah.
Well, I'd first say, I don't really consider myself a superhero, but I consider my teammates and my team to be a team of superheroes. I always try to hire above myself, always try to hire giants. And I think that's the reason why I've been so successful. And I continue to do that as we move forward here. I keep hiring, people that are better than me in different areas, and they always impress me by what they pull off. So, but anyways, that's a tidbit we can get into later about strategies. And I think that's one of the best things the listeners could do here is hire above yourself, hire superheroes. That way you don't have to be one. So getting back to who the hell was I before I got into all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go right back to the very beginning. I'll give you some very early tidbits. I'm by nature, and these things kind of played to my, I would say, advantage later on. Although it didn't early in my life play to much of an advantage. It was sort of a struggle with authority when I was younger. But I'm sort of a three different parts kind of fit into me, which is very naturally rebellious, for better or worse. I have a tendency to, hear everyone, see everyone going a certain direction and really question it. Well, why are we going that direction? Or be told I got to go this direction and really just generally challenge that. So that kind of rebellious nature. Also, I am very service driven. This probably goes back to my father used to bring me out some of my earliest memories, bringing me out to help him out with serving the poor. He was a teacher. My parents were teachers. My father specialized in middle school teaching, focusing on people with disabilities, trying to help them. And he used to bring me out to serve the poor and help out with different people. So this is kind of always something built into me really, really early. And then the third thing was being self-motivated and getting out there and learning on my own. So although I went to different universities that are considered prestigious, I don't think I learned much from there because I don't think the education's all that great. I think the network is good, but I think when I look back on what I actually learned, it was from really being self-motivated and educating myself, getting books, finding mentors, listening to podcasts like this. Actually, I didn't have podcasts when I first started, but if I did, I'd be jamming through it just like the listeners are right now, trying to get an edge on knowledge. But a couple of quick stories I can give you to kind of reinforce those three things, that kind of rebellious nature, non-conforming nature, very service oriented and extremely non-conventional in my learning. And these three things came together and really served me well in business when I launched into business, which was not something I was planning to do. Actually, I kind of backed my way into it as almost the last resort. So
well, hold on. You're saying business was the last resort?
For me, it was because in my family and growing up and maybe culturally, I'm very American, but I was raised by heavily Irish influence. And I think that my two of the women that helped raise me substantially, my grandmother and my actually two different grandmother figures, were both from Ireland. And they really, and then my parents also have a very, very strong emphasis on educating or helping people and things like that. And they never also saw business as an avenue for that. So coming out of college, I didn't have any desire to, work throughout college as well to do anything with business. I studied philosophy and the humanities and just pretty much studied everything that I get my hands on. And when I got out, I knew I wasn't going to be a good teacher because I had actually done some teaching. I'd done tutoring at school for some extra money, and I wasn't good at it. I was actually horrible. I thought I was good for a little bit, but then I realized I wasn't. I basically would just do all the work on my own and then give it back to the person, or get very frustrated. And I just wasn't good at it for some reason. But then coming out, so when I realized I was called into business, it was kind of a shock for me. I was like, this doesn't seem like a good thing necessarily. And actually my parents, didn't really see it as a good thing either necessarily. They were kind of like, hey, maybe become a professor or go to become a teacher, do something good for people. But business, you could do a lot of great things. And really that's where that services side of me kind of came in. and help me to really get in touch with the customers, serve the people I lead. Anybody that's, I bring on, like I say, hire superheroes, but then you got to serve all the superheroes and keep them moving, So
Yeah. So I have a question here, because there are many, entrepreneurs who are going through various forms of their transformation, and occasionally because of the environment that they're in, they experience some particular struggle. I mean, by your own admission, it's not exactly, business was not the first choice. So what was that conversation like when you go, hey guys, I'm gonna start a business? Was that like easy? What was that difficult? Did they go, yeah, great idea? Or was there some struggle there?
Well, part of my rebellious nature, or you might say non-conforming nature, helps me to kind of just go my own route, I think, even in the face of family members that don't see it. I'll go back to, even my brother tells this story a lot, actually. He told it at my wedding, actually. He's my best man. And he's a great guy. He's my early backer, early partner, 13, 14 years ago. He was a teacher as well, but he backed me with a little bit of the money he had, and I put a little bit of money I had from construction into a pot. And this is like, this is like $5,000. It wasn't a lot of money. And then he backed me, helping me I would use his credit line and try to get deals or whatever. So, but anyways, reversing back, he talks about when I was 3 years old and he was about 4. And my parents had this rule not to cross the street and I was on a tricycle, but across the street was a steep driveway that I liked to go down. But our street was a 45-mile-per-hour street where people would go like 45 to 50, pretty fast driving. And I decided I'm going across the street, and I was in my head, you're very young, like 3 years old, I can barely remember. I just remember picturing myself flying down that driveway and knowing I'm not supposed to, but I didn't see a reason why. I was like, well, I could see a clear path here. And, so I just decided I'm going. He started screaming at me, don't go. And I just booked it. I started, pedaling as fast as I can. And he was trying to chase after me, but he couldn't get me. And I crossed it and I almost got hit. I mean, the guy came right up to I just remember looking to the left. I heard a loud noise. I looked to the left and I just saw a bumper right next to my face.
Wow.
But the guy jumped out and he was freaked out and he was shaking. And he then brought me over and he's like, well, where's this kid's parents? And I was saying, they're not here pretty much. I was like 3 and my brother ratted me out. So the two things that he brings me to my parents and I got in trouble. But this is kind of an example of my tendency to just kind of go my own way. And not that was a very dumb move. I'm only 3, so what did I know? And my takeaways when I was like a little older was like, I'm talking 3, 4, 5, was like my brother ratted me out and that's what went wrong. So, but anyways, but this non-conforming nature or the ability to kind of look at something and decide I'm gonna do this if I see it makes sense to me, I think played to my advantages later on when I developed better reasoning, better judgment. So when I felt I was called to business, and I say called because I actually I felt that, and this sounds kind of crazy to people, especially nowadays, but I'm a Christian, and I actually felt that I was called by God to go into business. And I was sort of like almost thinking this was a temptation, like maybe money's evil, And sometimes that line from scripture there's a scripture line about this, but it's often misunderstood. And it's the love of money is the root of all evil. But really it's the love of is the problem, not the money. And on top of that, money is really better translated as mammon, which is anything of the world. So it's the love of the things of the world. The love of the things of the world really drives people towards evil. So that's the better interpretation. But in my mind, I was sort of conflating these things. And so this was kind of holding me back a little bit. But I saw this, maybe business is the vehicle. I got to make change and I got to serve people through. But it was a bit of a hump for me, actually. And I spent a couple of weeks in a monastery, a Christian monastery. And sounds a little crazy, but I'm a pretty extreme person. Yeah. So I spent a couple of weeks total silence, except I would talk to a monk here and there about this kind of feelings that I was getting from prayer. And I decided I was called to go to business. So when I got out of that time period, I brought this, I mentioned it to my parents, and my dad was just confused. They're great people, by the way. But he was just confused as he didn't quite see it. Like it wasn't connecting in his mind. Well, how is this going to, serve people? So anyways, that's kind of how I got in, and I decided to go for it. But then I didn't know anything about business. And maybe some of the people listening here, they certainly know more than I did if they're listening to this. So, and I didn't know a damn thing,
But this is what you're bringing up. But this you're actually hitting on my point, is there are lots of examples, at least in the stories that you're telling, where you're not allowing what you didn't know, the skill set you did not have. And this handicaps many people. Well, I studied this, so that therefore means I must go this direction. All of those things literally did not matter to you, and you went a completely different direction. And I must know where that comes from.
Yeah, I mean, so what I would say to the listeners that are in the same position I was, and like I said, you're already in a better position than I was if you're listening to this, because you're already more educated than I was. And there's now tools like this. You can listen to a podcast, hear from a guy who's been doing it for 13, 14 years and has a company is over $1 billion in real estate that built from scratch. So now you're listening to a person that's got nuggets of kind of hard-earned experience that you can just grab that and learn the easy way. Learn the easy way is also another tip I'd say. I've learned the hard way in a number of things, but I'd encourage people to learn the easy way. Much eeasier. Trust me.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%.
But you're not going to be able to avoid it anyways. Once you get in the game, there's a good saying out there. Our head of media says this. It's a pretty funny one. He got it from, I think, Mike Tyson's trainer, but it's, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
So
100%.
That's how it is in business. You got a plan until you get into the game, and then you get punched in the face, and you're like, whoa, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Totally. Plan goes straight out the window. So talk to us for a moment. How do we go from construction to Trustwork? Like that sounds like a leap. That sounds like I'm going to take a stab and say the Peter that was construction is not the same Peter I'm talking to today.
Yeah. I mean, well, same in some regards, right?
Sure.
Still just as numb-nutted and
upgraded version.
Yeah, just as hard-headed as ever. But now a little bit more humility, maybe, right? So, but yeah, I'd say, look, I mean, when I was a kid, I started out working. I used to work actually in middle school, even before I think it wasn't even legal what I was doing. But I would go and work on farms doing baling hay, but I also worked construction, labor jobs, and I did a lot of this type of work on the side. And I mean, I was going to school too, public school and this and that. But I did that for making some extra money, and this kind of experience of working with construction folks actually helped me because that was how I had my initial savings, which was like $3,000 to $5,000 or something like this, right? So it wasn't a lot of money, but I had made it through construction doing labor. But I got to understand the people there, and when I got into business, got into real estate, I was buying deals, buying properties. I bought, like I said, I bought over we've purchased over 17,000 apartments thus far over the last 13, 14 years, and so it started very small though, and what I did was I leveraged what I knew, and that's what I would say to the listeners here is what I knew was I knew a little bit of construction, but I knew how to read, which sounds like a very low bar here. So this is what I was starting with, but I knew how to read. I didn't have the best networks though. I didn't really know anybody that had money, and I didn't have capital much at all. Right, I had a very little bit. But I knew how to read very well, and I was also very good at leadership. I was good at jumping in front and leading. And I had discovered this through history. I'd been like captain of my teams in sports or president of my class in high school, stuff like that. And this kind of educated me got me to understand I had some leadership skills. So I was able to leverage off that and leverage off my ability to read. And I used the interlibrary loan system to get all these books, like 150 books, and I was slammed through that. That's how I got my initial education in business. And anyway, so as I got in, and then I'm going to fast forward pretty fast here, but fast forwarding over 14 years is now I'm in this position where I've done a lot of business deals. I've done a lot of construction stuff, right? Running through, we've done a ton of construction stuff. And I understand that vertical very, very well. And about 3-4 years ago, or even longer, I was kind of seeing a bigger idea that was matching more to what was already in my head and my heart and what I was already kind of working on without realizing it. I realized it, but I didn't know kind of what I was doing fully. And this was to create an entrepreneurship platform to help out people that are like the listeners here, right? So people can have the stuff that I didn't have starting out, which is tools. And really what we have is software tools, capital. And how do you get capital? Well, you get on Trustwork and you build a reputation. And then that reputation online allows you to access capital because people can get information about you and see what you're doing and get transactional information and be able to take a bet on you. Because people with money, they want to make money, right? So it's just that they don't know who the hell to make money with. They can't see anything. So, but if you can get that information online. So this is kind of the birth of the platform that has how this all sort of come together. But I had this idea. Then I went to 85 countries, like I had said in the early part of this podcast. And why 85 countries? Well, I mean, partially I'm a masochist and I like to get punished. But but no, more importantly was I actually just had a kid too before I left. So this just shows that people have obstacles, and you got to the obstacle is a challenge. It could be a stumbling block or a stepping stone for you, but you got to think about it like you got to realize it's definitely one or the other. It's not going to be neutral when you have obstacles. So I had a child, I just got married, and I realized that I didn't know much about other countries. I had been in Ecuador before because I went to Ecuador on this kind of very intense thing. I wanted to learn Spanish. So I had this idea, if I go to Ecuador and I just immerse myself for 2 months, I'll learn Spanish. And I actually did. I actually speak Spanish in the home now with the kids. My kid's first language is Spanish. But that's how I learned Spanish. So the only thing I had of another country was Ecuador. And I didn't know much. And I went to Nicaragua as well. Sorry, I've been to two different ones. I went to Nicaragua on a mission one time over Christmas when I was in college. Hope for the children. Couldn't find anybody to bring medical supplies in, and the military had taken over the country. It wasn't allowing supplies in for the people. So I flew in on Christmas, like Christmas Eve or something, and brought in a ton of these things. And I stayed for a couple of weeks, like distributing and helping the people on the ground there. But actually, and so that kind of goes into the service side. I mean, that was in college, right? But anyways, these things all kind of came together and enabled me to become, really. I played to my strengths, is what I'd say. Like listeners here are probably thinking, like, all right, that's not me, Like I can't do that. Well, you're probably right. You can't do what I did, but I can't do what you can do because you got talents and gifts that I don't have, but you got to find out what those are. And you got to play the game to your talents, because then you can't lose really, because no one else can compete with you if you just play your game.
Yep. 100%. I love it. Now you help us understand, why people use Trustwork. What is Trustwork? Because I think there's going to be a number of people who are going to find some of the answers for the resources that they're looking for with your platform. Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you though is, where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do to get some of your time back is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Yeah, I mean, Trustwork it's a platform of entrepreneurship, right? In the long term, we look at it as going to be the new land of opportunity, an opportunity for everyone in the world, right? So that's why I went to these 85 countries, was I needed to understand what people on the ground need. So that's why I went there. I had over 1,000 meetings in these countries with different people. And I used the Harvard network, the Georgetown network, and a bunch of other networks that I have to access these meetings. And then I did cold emailing as well to get these things. So I had all these meetings, I took 1,600 pages of notes about these countries. And then from there, I developed this platform. So if there's international listeners on this thing, well, this platform is also for you. And I developed it out of the experiences in these other countries. I mean, you can almost like name a country that's large or whatever, or differentiated, and I've been there. I haven't been to every single country. I've only been to 85, right? But I did it took me a year and a half to complete all this. And like I said, I had my wife and kids, so the logistics were actually quite difficult getting around. And I went to every major city inside the country. So in China, I went to 11 cities. And I think I went to like 12 cities in India. So I went all over the place, right? And hit the ground, checking what do they need? How does the business work? What do entrepreneurs need to succeed? And that's what the platform is a platform for them. But right now, what we're doing, our entry point strategy, and this is very relevant to the listeners, so they should listen up, is it's to Uberize real estate services. So what does that mean? It means basically, if you're out there doing deals, and all of them are out there, right? They're either trying to make deals or they got deals going and they want to further their game. If they want to get stuff done, right? They have a deal, they want to get contracting done, or they want to get roofing done, or flooring, painting, maintenance. This is the innards of what goes into being successful. This is maybe not what everybody talks about, right? What they talk about is, like the sexy deal, right? Well, good. That lasts for a very short period of time. After the closing is, I used to always say, and I don't say this as much because I'm not as involved in the specific deals. I act as the board for the company now, but I used to always say to everybody, because they used to celebrate too much on the closing. When they close a property, I'd say, hey, listen, don't celebrate on the closing. Celebrate once we're making money. Yeah. Because the issue is, when you close, you know who makes money? The lawyers make money. The brokers make money. Everybody makes money. The seller makes money, but the buyer actually has a liability.
Right.
So don't celebrate until the fat lady sings. You know what I'm saying? You gotta, your fight just started. So like, once you get on that deal, then the whole thing starts. So you got to now turn that thing around. You got to get all the fixing done. You got to get all the construction done. And now that all sounds easy, right? Until you actually get in the ring and you get punched in the face, right? Because the first time you call a contractor to have him come in, and if he's really cool and he's like really easy to work with, he's probably the type of person that's not the right person, because the ones who are really good are not available. They're busy. So especially if you're new to the game, right? It's really hard to get good contractors. Anybody who's done anything or owns a home, anybody who's listening knows that this is true, basically. Yep. But when you're actually owning a property and you want to get stuff done, this is one of the hardest challenges. It's even basic stuff like a trustworthy painter. You got to paint every place you buy, right? This sounds like boring stuff, but guess what? This is what is going to make you money or lose you money. Because you don't get that place fixed up, you don't get it looking nice. Well, guess what? You're not going to get a good resident. You're not going to get a good tenant. You can't rent it out. Nobody wants to go, live in your crappy property. You gotta get that thing and make it look nice. Otherwise, you're going to get a crappy tenant who's going to screw you over. So you got to, you know what I mean? It's all like everything's like nuts and bolts, How I think about it. So that's always the point that I try to stress to individuals. Owning the property is one thing. Turning it into a profitable business, a profitable asset, that's a completely different skill set. And understand that, yes, it starts at the day. In my head, it starts the moment you wrote the offer. You got to get that process together, because there's so much that does need to be done in order to make that happen. And if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that Trustwork pulls all of these separate services that it takes for us to execute into one simple app and platform, so that we can find them for our local area. Absolutely. That's exactly right. So listeners that are out there, they might remember, probably almost anywhere in the country this is true. Anytime you needed a taxi, now this would be more true in New York, where I'm from upstate New York, but whenever I needed a taxi, it was like the time you need it is the time it's not around. You get out of the airport, anywhere you go, you need a taxi. This is like, 10 years ago or whatever, right? You get out of the airport, you need a taxi. Well, guess what? They're not available, because everybody needs a taxi when you need it. And then when you don't need a taxi, you always see a line of taxis. It's very annoying. So this is kind of like how it works in construction or getting anything done in real estate. Every time you need somebody, everyone else needs it. It's feast or famine, right? So you need to you need to go lease out an apartment, right? So, or whatever, right? Lease out an office space. Well, usually the time that you want to go lease it out is around the time when everyone else wants to lease it out, whether it's due to the local area. Might have like a university, right? If they have a university, that's going to cause the time around August to be like a feast. And everyone's going to be about, all the fish are coming in then. All the people want to rent then. But if you don't make it happen then you lose out, right? But then if you go to try to lease out an apartment then, it's the hardest time to get a leasing agent to help you, because they're all so busy. So every time you need it, it's not around. So, or if it's the winter time somewhere, it's harder to get people who fix furnaces, depending if you're in a cold area. If you're in a warm area, it's hard to get air conditioning people when it's hot as heck, right? And that's when you need it. That's when it's an emergency. So what the platform does is, you're on there. It allows people to post jobs. They want to get a job done, and you could go see that job if you're a contractor, and you could bid on it live. So for me, if I'm on there, I could see someone bidding on it, and I can communicate a message back and forth with them, and we can agree to a price right there and get it in contract and say, okay, cool. And then also the advantage is you can see that person's credentials and their reputation. And if you can't, you can also request that person and say, hey, man, love to have you come over and fix this and come over to my house. But, I would appreciate if you fill out your Trustwork profile more, because really it's going to create more trust. I can then understand who you are, and you can see who I am. but I really don't want you over my home or my rental property or whatever it is until I see who you are, which is a reasonable request, right? So anyway, so this is kind of like what this does is it creates transparency. And then we have two different businesses on the platform that we've built, we've seeded, and these focus on two aspects of the real estate game. One is called Turns, and that focuses on, and this is going to surprise everyone, turns. I'm kidding. But in other words, like it's about turning over an apartment.
Yes,
it's actually industry jargon, right?
Yeah.
But if you have an Airbnb or if you have a rental property, same thing, right? You want to get it turned over for the next resident, the next tenant, the next guest, or if you're own hotels, the same thing, right? You got to turn that over. That turnover process is it's the most important first thing you got to worry about. If you don't get that done, you can't get anything else done. So that's why it's called turns. It's the biggest problem if you own a lot of properties is the turnover process and getting it done really well. Once you do that really well, then you market it. But until you do that well, you can't have inventory to sell. So in other words, you have kind of like empty space you're paying the bank for, but you can't turn it over, right? So turns is like Uber. It focuses, it's an Uber for turnovers of apartments. So you need to get the resident leaves. Okay, no problem. Boom, you post it up on turns. They hit it, they take it down, and then they agree to with a price with you. They'll take the whole thing from soup to nuts, and they'll get the whole turnover done. And we've been able to, and we're doing this on scale over thousands of apartments, and it's working. And we're taking turn time down like 10, 15 days, sometimes 20 days, which is nuts. Because if you take 20, if you live in California, if you live in California, that's like $300 a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Each day you get, and that's just money that's found money for the owner. So these first ideas were scratching my own itch, basically, right? And things I knew that were problems. The second one is called Odd Job. Now, Odd Job, this will surprise the listeners as well, is to get done odd jobs.
Yeah, got it.
Because anytime you own stuff, right? If you own properties, or if you get stuff, right, there's always like random things that happen that are almost like particular to your property, but they're not. I mean, there's people out there that do this stuff, but they're kind of niche. Like the gate breaks. You got to fix the gate. Well, you got to call like a gate company or someone that knows how to fix this type of gate. You could use a handyman, but he might not know what the hell he's doing with that gate. Depends what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Or you might have like something like, you've got to get remediation done in some regard. It could be an infestation of some sort when you bought a property. It might be, who the heck knows? But you could post that up there through Odd Job, or it could just be something similar like Porter Services to get a cleaning done. Or whatever it is, you post it up there and they could get that pesky sort of job done for you and get that off your plate. And owners that own a home too, they might be listening. You could post anything you want done there and they'll take care of it for you.
It's new. I like where this is headed because at the end of the day, because of your experience actually owning property and going through construction, you're solving a lot of the challenges and dare I say obstacles for some people wondering, well, I don't want to close on the property and I don't want to write the offer. I don't want to do these things because I don't yet have all of these pieces in place that I know I need, but I also don't know where to find them all. So I like how you've put it all together and made that happen. Now, for those that actually have listened this far and are pretty fired up about everything that you're talking about, what's going to be the best way for them to track you down, find out more, and participate in what you guys are doing?
Yeah, best way to find me is at Peter Rex on Twitter, at Peter Rex on Twitter, or jump on Trustwork. And I would challenge the listeners here to just in general become a part of Trustwork Nation. It's really it's a rise up movement. It's what we're kind of calling it the rise up movement, which is enable people, regular people that are out there to rise up and become entrepreneurs, like further themselves anywhere in the world. It's a rise up movement. And I would challenge you to create a profile, start to invest in yourself. So it's early on Trustwork. So you get on there, it might be really quiet. Like, hey, it's like crickets around here, right? But like, don't worry, it's going to come along. In the meantime, you could give people props. Props is a form of recognition. It's like, I don't know if the listeners here are familiar with giving someone props, but you give someone props if they done a good job or they're good at this or they're good at that. You can give them props for a number of things, but I'd encourage the listeners to jump on, create a profile, and give 3 props to different people and invite some of your friends on as well, because this is the future of work.
Yeah, I get that. And I see, you can see lots of evidence of that no matter where you look, because that's generally what's happening, especially as there's more movement towards aggregating services and making sure that, we can have access to the service that we need when we need it. And this review-based platform through the app, I like exactly what's going down. Now, as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. There's a person or two who's listened this far to you and I talking, and they've come to a decision. They've just, they're at what I like to call the precipice of decision. They've been driving or walking their dog, and they're like, you know what? That's it. I'm drawing the line in the sand. If Peter can do it, I can do it. I mean, he's got the $1 billion company. It's my turn. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and make my plan and make this thing happen. But like I know, Peter, that when that moment of decision occurs, there's also something else that's right there with us. And it comes in the form of a voice. And it's a voice that reminds us of how it won't work. And who on earth do you think you are? You're going to do what? You never studied anything about real estate. You know nothing about what you're trying to do. Why on earth are you going to do this? And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time they're going to be completely different than before because they're going to follow through. And they're going to follow through in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I'll give sort of a complex answer, which I think is the only way to actually answer this with honesty to somebody. So what I'd say is, there's going to be people, it doesn't matter, who you are, that are going to have people that you love or they love you as well. And they're going to be negative, right? They're going to be telling you can't do it. You shouldn't do it, right? I would draw the line on two different sides of that. And I would say there's those who are just negative and pessimistic who are saying you personally will not succeed. Those types of people, if they are your loved ones and stuff like that, right? Even if they are your loved ones, I would say you should check them and tell them not to talk like that to you, and to change and reform their behavior. Otherwise, you're going to distance yourself from them, because that's very pessimistic, negative talk. Now, on the other side, I would say there's people who are going to say, they're going to really, what they're trying to say is that they believe in you, but they don't think it's the right time, or these are the risks. I would look at those people as giving you very good warnings and advice. And they're spotting obstacles that you're going to overcome. So I'd be kind of almost grateful to them and listen to the concerns they have and jot those down, and then figure out ways that you are going to overcome those things, because what they're spotting for you is probably true. Those are probably obstacles. Like you could be like maybe you're out there and you're a nurse, right? Or you're a teacher, right? I could speak to teachers better, right? Because everybody in my family is a teacher, basically. So, so my parents were, and my three of my siblings were teachers, actually. So I would say that you could be a teacher, you could be working, getting a salary, and that, but you want to make that entrepreneurial move because you have some things in your heart, like you want to take care of your family better, you want to take care of your kids, you want to pay for college for them, whatever. There's a lot of reasons, right? You want to become a little more financially independent. Well, people are going to say, no, don't do that. You don't know anything about business, blah, blah, blah. Well, good. I didn't know anything about business either, so I'm with you. So, But I would say take what they put down and then figure out how you will overcome each one of those obstacles. You just have to put some thought into it. It's going to take you longer to figure out how to do this. But your reasons how you're going to overcome them are not really that person's business. What they provided you was the obstacle, and you have to figure out how to overcome it, and you will. So I would do that.
Love it. Keep going. Sorry.
The second thing, the other thing I think you should do is you should assess yourself very realistically and leverage your friends for this. What do you suck at? A lot of people always talk about, what are you good at, this and that? Well, you could probably find out what you're good at by figuring out what you suck at. So, for example, I suck at managing people. That's true, actually. You might be like, well, how the hell does this guy have a 450 plus team, a company with employees, right? How is that possible if he sucks at managing people? Well, it's a significant problem, and it's a real issue, right? So what do? Is I hire people who are just like lights out, good at managing. That's the best thing to do, right? Instead of trying to run away from who you are or try to become better at an area that you're handicapped, just find someone who's a superhero in that area and try to get those people. In other words, recognize where you have blind spots and backfill them with people who are giants. So this is the way this is how we're all kind of like out there together, right? If anybody was a truly God, right? They were just out there, they could do anything, then there would be no purpose for teams or companies or whatever. They wouldn't have to listen to this podcast because they wouldn't need me to say something or you to say something that kind of gives them a little insight, right? So recognize your true weaknesses, recognize where you have deficiencies of knowledge, and then figure out how to make up for that.
Love it.
And then I would say figure out where your strengths are and where you have passions, what you love, and then structure the game to what you're good at and what you love. Like those two things, your passions and what you're good at. And then when you find out your passions and what you're good at, that's really your talents and what you're love. Because if you can play to what your passions are, what you love doing, then it's like play. It's like not even work anymore, right? It's like play. You're just having a good time. I mean, I have such a great time working. I have to like force myself to take a day off. And I take a day off on Sunday, but I literally have to force myself and I have to keep my phone away from me because it could become like I love what I do, right? So, but play in an area that you love what you do. Figure out what you'll love doing. And it might be something that might at first be kind of boring, but you could structure it in a way that you actually love doing it because you're creating a great service. So with Trustwork, we're trying to empower people to rise up. That's our mission. We want people to rise up and live abundantly. Well, I can get out of bed every morning for that. That's not a problem. Like that's going to pump me up. So like figure out how to structure your mission. Now, if I structured it like, oh, I'm building an engineering company that's going to build software around, software tools, and that's all I do all day and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm not going to get out of bed for that. Right. So, but if I'm building software tools and to empower people to rise up and live abundantly, well, I'm going to get out of bed for that. That's going to pump me up. So
like it 100%. And I get it. Because at the end of the day, something has to change. And even if it's our own perception and actions of ourselves, but also being self-aware is 100% necessary. Now, I definitely appreciate the work that you guys are doing, the team that you have put together, and just the impact that you're having on, I'll say, society as a whole by tackling the problems that you guys do and choose to actually make happen. So let me be the first to say thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, wisdom, and insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Jay, thank you. And you're making it happen in the same way we are. And actually, we share a very similar mission. You're educating people, and you're trying to help entrepreneurs or people to become more entrepreneurial and help themselves become more financially free to help their own families out and help out society even more. So keep up the great work. Your materials are excellent, and your books out there are just great. I wish that stuff was out there when I was, reversing back 13, 14 years ago, because that's free leg up for everybody out there that's listening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to trustwork.com, download the app, make a profile, start the process, because you've been looking for contractors and people in your team and your network, and it's not quite as good as it could be. It could be better. And now you have a resource to make that happen. At the end of the day, nothing's going to change until you start doing small little things differently and gathering that team around you. And as you just heard, it's not just about your skills. It's going to take more people, and together everyone does actually accomplish more. It's not just a cliche. And also remember, when you need a taxi, it's not going to be there. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Until next time.